Ah, yes, that worked. All right. Mm-hmm. Still got ice in it. Been in my car for 2 days. It's still got ice in it. Amazing. Yeah. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Again, my name is Diallo, and for activity right now, at this moment, we're going to do poetry, short stories, and jokes. Okay? So I have a poetry book that I brought with me. It's called Poetry from January 2007. So there are many, obviously, poets who all got together, and every month they have basically a book of the month. So we are going back to January 2007. Now, what are some of the things that happened in January 2007? I can tell you right now, in January 2007, I was in college. I was in college in Nashville, Tennessee, which is a great place. If you ever want to visit there, if you ever have a chance to, it is a fantastic place to be. Okay, so let's get down to it now. We got our poetry, and this is from January 2007, and this features poets Jacques Redet, Zygmunt Herbert, and Durs Gruben. Let's see what kind of poetry we got here. Now, as I read this, I want you to think about the words that you're hearing and how it relates to people in your life. So this one's called "The Cat Sat on the Mat in Defense of Illiteracy." What do you think that means? Let's find out. From the fact that he managed to learn the cat sat on the mat, Mr. Cogito has drawn some exaggerated conclusions. Does the ability thus acquired authorize him to pass sentence, to found schools of good taste, opine on projects for mankind's reconstruction, after the example of the comical Auguste Comte? Would it not be better to abandon that cheap knowledge and to stick with the wisdom of an old mountain folk, devoid of real progress? It would mean rising unemployment, large numbers of facial openings without a job, the lucid knowledge that a philosophy is superfluous and even harmful.
What?
It's a lot going on, isn't it? So let's break that down a little bit. Again, the title is called "The Cat Sat on the Mat in Defense of Illiteracy." So when you hear "the cat sat on the mat," what does that mean to you?
Cat took a rest on the mat.
The cat took a rest on the mat. And then in defense of illiteracy. So how does the cat correspond to illiteracy? Can cats read? I don't think so. Are they good at working? Like catching mice?
I don't know.
You don't know that? You're not a cat fan, are you?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. You got cats at your house.
Oh, yeah, they come to me.
They come to you. You feed them too?
No,
No. If you feed them, they'll keep coming back.
no, they come back anyway because I love them.
Let's read from the beginning again. From the fact that he managed to learn the cat sat on the mat, Mr. Cogito has drawn some exaggerated conclusions. So as you break that down, Mr. Cogito is watching the cat sit on the mat. And as he's watching that, he's coming up with his own conclusions about why the cat's sitting on the mat and what the cat's intentions are.
Asleep.
Okay, so it could be asleep. What else could the cat be doing? What else could the cat be doing, Jose? Anything.
Who?
It could be pooping, right? Or trying to find a female cat or a male cat. True? Okay. Let's go on to the second part. Does the ability thus acquired authorize him to pass sentence to found schools of good taste? So right off the bat, I read, does the ability of thus acquired authorize him to pass sentence? So what does the phrase to pass sentence mean? What do you think that would mean? In my head, it means to pass judgment.
Pass judgment with a punishment.
Exactly. So Mr. Cagito is looking at that cat and passing judgment on him for sitting on the mat being lazy. But Mr. Cagito doesn't know what the cat did before he sat on the mat. Okay, so those are exaggerated conclusions by seeing something that you didn't see what it was doing before. Okay. Opine on projects for mankind's reconstruction after the example of comical Auguste Comte. Now, for that area, you get to know who Auguste Comte is. Correct? Let's find out who Auguste Comte is. I've heard the name, but I completely forgot who he is. Let's find out who he is. Auguste Comte. So, Auguste Comte was a French philosopher and writer who formulated the doctrine of positivity. He's often regarded as the first philosopher of science in the modern sense of the term. So basically, his whole premise was positive thoughts breed positive outcomes. You think that's true in life?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. What are some of the times where it's not?
We're one person.
Okay.
It takes a large majority to make this flow.
That's true. So you have to have everybody kind of thinking in the same way to progress. Okay. What about negative thoughts? How do negative thoughts relate to society?
Well, in terms of progress, society makes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can get people motivated to do good things, or you can motivate them to just sit on the grass.
That's true. Very, very true. All right, so the next part. Would it not be better to abandon that cheap knowledge and stick to the wisdom of the old mountain folk devoid of real progress? So let's break that down a little bit. Would it be not better to abandon that cheap knowledge and stick with the wisdom of the old mountain folk? So what does that mean? What do you believe that means?
Why are they old mountain folk?
Well, the old mountain folk have been doing the same thing over and over again. And they stay stagnant at a straight line. So you have two choices. You can abandon them and look for greater knowledge, or you can stay the course and stay stagnant exactly the same.
I'm not staying here.
You're not staying where?
But,
So you want to move ahead.
certainly.
You want to move past the old folks up the mountain and move ahead. I think that's true for most of society.
How about you?
Certainly. What about you?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true for most of society.
He's moving on.
Got to move on, otherwise you're going to be devoid of real progress.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Let's go to the last part. It would mean rising unemployment, a large number of facial openings without a job, the lucid knowledge that all philosophy is superfluous and even harmful. That's a lot of,
Bullshit.
to say the least. So it would mean rising unemployment and a large number of facial openings. What do you think facial openings means?
Smiles. Yes.
Okay. There's no right or wrong answer.
Yes.
Gas. Okay. In my mind, facial openings is a different way of saying People looking for jobs. Just a fancy poetic way of saying it. Yeah, using big words to act like you know what you're saying, you really have no idea what you're saying. I'm good at
What?
that. Using big words to make it seem like I know what I'm saying, I have no idea what I'm saying.
What?
It's the plague. All right, so let's look at a different poem now. Mr. Cognito's all of this. Mm-hmm. Okay, this one is called Strongly Scented Sonnet. Yes. Now, can we all remember what a sonnet is? If you know it all? So a sonnet is a type of poem. It's usually a love poem that's written. The best sonnets are probably written by, or best historically are written by William Shakespeare. So let's start here. Just kissing the skin inside the chemise, she tucked a modest apple in the nest of her hair beneath her arm, a scent like cheese, extruding musky fragrances when pressed. And for 2 months the apple crabbed and freaked, the hollow armpit ripening, the smell about the hatch, chiclet, plump and beaked, that taps suggestively against its shell. She wraps and sent it to her fiancé, who amorously kept it in his bed, inhaling it superb until the day when he and his contributors should wed. Dear sir, do you detect the perfume of what I have used as substitute for love? That's very strange. I have no idea what's going on there. Well, let's break it down.
It stinks.
Something stinks, right? And she's giving it to her fiance from under her armpit. Woo. That's what I was thinking too. Some funky cheese, apparently. That's not good if you smell some funky cheese. I need to go to the doctor for that. So let's start from the beginning again. Break it down. Just kissing the skin inside the chemise, she tucked a modest apple in the nest of her hair beneath her arm. So what do you think that means? Armpit. So just kissing the skin inside her chemise, she tucked a modest apple in the nest of hair beneath her arm. I don't know. Let's find out. Let's find out what a chemise is. Why am I getting pictures of women in lingerie? Makes no sense. Oh, okay. That's why. A chemise or shift is a classic smock or modern type of woman's undergarment or dress. Historically, a chemise was a simple garment worn next to the skin to protect clothing from sweat and body oils, the precursor to the modern shirts commonly worn in Western nations. Now it makes sense. All right.
Underwear.
It's just like think of like a shirt lingerie type thing. Yeah. So just kissing the skin inside the chemise, she tucked a modest apple in the nest of hair beneath her arm. So obviously she was wearing a shirt. She took the apple and she stuck it under her arm. But what could the apple represent, right? A scent like cheese, extruding musky fragrances when passed. So that kind of tells me she has the apple underneath her armpit. She's walking around and the apple's starting to ferment. Because you ever smell fermenting fruit? It smells quite musky. Exactly. And for 2 months, the apple crabbed and freaked the hollow armpit, ripening the smell about to hatch. So she's had this apple under her armpit for 2 months, walking around. To me, that'd be uncomfortable. Really uncomfortable. Mm-hmm.
She's lost her apple.
She's lost her marbles.
She's lost her apple.
A chiclet, plump and beaked, that taps suggestively against its shell. I have no idea about that one. Yeah, a chiclet plum and beak that taps suggestively against its shell. Okay. What's being born? A chiclet?
Chick, yeah.
Where's it coming from?
Inside the egg.
Is the egg the apple? So she wrapped and sent it to her fiance, who amorously kept it in by his bed, inhaling it. Superb, until the day when he and its contributors should wed. So to me, this is starting to sound like a love story. Kind of like a Romeo and Juliet type story, where if they meet and they get found out, they'll get killed. So instead, she's gonna send her fragrance to him through a messenger and an apple in her armpit. He gets it, like you said, pheromones. He gets it and just goes, cheesy. Cheesy.
Put a ban on
He does that. She does that to always make sure that he is in her mind before they wed.
on the wedding night.
It's so cheesy. I don't know. That's an interesting one. Let's do one more. So the purpose of this is to try to get you to think a little bit outside the box.
How big is the box?
As big or small as you want it. Right? A box could be little, it could be big. It could be whatever you like it to be.
As long as you can still carry it.
Bingo. Bingo. The next one is called The Roses. It's called The Roses by Atsuro Riley. The house with a nick and snicker name, snort and grunt. Shun trailer house, popped, scorn burnt, side indented, thorn bind, boondocked in a hollow. In a green holler clamor mire of itch moss and gravel. Let's not do that one. I had no idea what's going on there. We're going to do a different one. It's called Return from the Ball by Jacques Redet. I did. This one's called Return from the Ball. The old fathers, in their stiff habits, also passed the door one summer evening, and for a honeybee's age, the little immortal flame danced in their eyes. Late that night, back from the ball, they peed in the canal against the cemetery wall. Out of the surrounding silence, powerful as a mountain, the silk deluge descended from the poplars. Many of the dead were already working underground, but Sunday evening forgetting appeased them. And the upside-down Harrow at the start of the field gleamed, holding hay mixed with stars between his teeth. Halfway up the hill they shouted, for nothing, for the pleasure of hearing, their voices disappeared to the depths of the barn, the granaries, filled with wheat, as billowing as the bodies of women, and then to the noise, always underway beneath the night.
I don't get it.
That's why we're going to break it down. Think about the title, Returning from the Ball. What do you think that means?
It is.
Okay. How about you, Jose? Returning from the ball. What do you suspect that means?
Dead.
Like what?
They're dead.
They're dead? Okay. Let's break it down a little bit. The old fathers, in their stiff habits, also passed the door one summer evening. So I'm guessing you got grumpy old men that have been stuck in their old habits since they were young, passed the door one summer evening. And for a honeybee's age, the little immortal flame danced in their eyes. Okay. So they're walking past an open door where I'm going to say people are dancing, people are having fun. But because of their old ways, they don't believe in that. They think it's blasphemy. Well, yeah. Like the movie Footloose, right? Footloose was based on a true story. Footloose is a movie about a little town where they're very conservative and they do not believe dancing. They believe dancing is for the devil. So they do not allow their high school kids to go to dances and dance because they think it's going to make them promiscuous or something. So in order to have a dance, the kids get together and they form a petition and an agreement with the town elders that said they can have this dance if they do certain things and don't do certain things. It's just a story, but it's based on a true story. Late that night, back from the ball, they peed in the canal against the cemetery wall. So obviously they went to the ball. That's what I was thinking. They got drunk. It's exactly what I was thinking. It's the only way you're going to pee into a canal, right? You're hammered drunk. Not only did they pee against the wall, but they peed against the cemetery wall.
They were mocking death.
Okay. And out of the surrounding silence, powerful as a mountain, the silk deluge descended from the poplars, and many of the dead were already working underground. So what could that possibly mean?
Poplar is a tree, right?
Yep. So out of the surrounding silence, powerful as a mountain, the silk deluge descended from the poplars. Many of the dead were already working underground.
I don't get it.
That's okay. Poetry is something that
It's like a veil, the life that they're living currently.
so they're outside, obviously peeing on the cemetery wall, and they're surrounded by silence. Now, silence in itself is a very powerful tool,
So it's peeing on the cemetery.
yes, but silence can be as powerful as a mouth. It can scare people,
Anything can be.
but silence has a certain power over people. Think about it. If you're scared to speak up, are you going to be loud or silent? If you're scared to speak your mind because you feel like if you do, you're going to be hurt, would you keep yelling or would you be silent? More likely than not, you're going to be silent. There are going to be some those who are going to speak out.
Just answer your
Yes, I know. But more often than not, people are going to be silent because they're scared of reprisals. That's the power of silence. And then it says many of the dead were already working underground. So obviously they not only did they pee on the cemetery wall, but they walked into the cemetery. Maybe those dead already working underground was the cemetery itself with the tombstones. Okay. But Sunday and even forgetting appeased them, and the upside down harrow at the start of the field gleamed. Again, but Sunday and even forgetting appeased them. Let's break that down. You have the word Sunday, meaning, what would Sunday mean? And let's say,
day of rest.
okay, day of rest. Where do people usually go on Sundays? Church. Not necessarily. But if you're religious, you're going to go to church on Sunday, right? And if you mix that in with the dead, they walk through a cemetery and were peeing on graves. Now, to me, that sounds like desecration of graves.
Sounds disgusting.
Yes. So if you go to church on Sundays and you believe in a higher power, why would you then piss on somebody's grave?
Did you get too much sugar?
Holding hay mixed with stars between his teeth, halfway up the hill they shouted. For nothing, for the pleasure of hearing their voices disappear into the depths of the barn, the granaries filled with wheat, as billowing as the bodies of women. So right there, I see what this poet does is he equates the bodies of women to wheat and granaries. Why do you think that is? What does the body of a woman and granaries have in common?
Nourishment?
Yeah, exactly, nourishment, right? They both can sustain life. Does that make sense? Yeah. And then into the noise, always beneath the night. So maybe they themselves are actually dead. That's all I'm going with. Interesting. I think way too much. All right. So now we're going to move on from poetry to jokes. Yeah,
Books.
jokes, hoax. What language would that be? Hoax. Mm-hmm. All right, so here's going to be the first joke we have. These are short story jokes, okay? Last year, I replaced all the windows in my house with those expensive double pane, energy efficient kind. But this week, I got a call from the contractor complaining that his work had been completed a whole year, and I had yet to pay for them. Boy, oh boy, did we go around. Just because I'm blonde doesn't mean that I am automatically stupid. So I proceeded to tell him that just what his fast-talking sales guy had told me last year. He said that in 1 year, the windows would pay for themselves. There was silence on the other end of the line, so I just hung up. And he hasn't called back. Guess he was embarrassed.
Yeah.
All right, let's do another one. A little old man shuffled slowly into an ice cream parlor and pulled himself slowly, painfully up onto a stool. After catching his breath, he ordered a banana split. The waitress asked kindly, "Crushed nuts?" "No," he replied, "arthritis." A wife was making a breakfast of fried eggs for her husband. Suddenly, her husband burst into the kitchen. "Careful," he said. "Careful. Put in some more butter." "Oh my gosh, you're cooking too many at once. Too many. Turn them. Turn them now. We need more butter." "Oh my gosh, where are we going to get more butter? They're going to stick. Careful, careful." "I said be careful. You never listen to me when you're cooking. Never. Turn them. Hurry up. Are you crazy? Have you lost your mind? Don't forget to salt them. You know you always forget to salt them. Use the salt. Use the salt. The salt." The wife stared at him. "What in the world is wrong with you? You think I don't know how to Fry a couple eggs? The husband calmly replied, I just wanted to show you what it was like when I'm driving.
Oh, no.
I like that one.
That turns it around.
It sure does, huh?
Where'd you get that joke?
That's more than a joke. It's a dog too.
To play on society, right? Two elderly women were eating breakfast in a restaurant one morning. Ethel noticed something funny about Mabel's ear, and she said, Mabel, do you know you've got a suppository in your left ear? Mabel answered, I have a suppository? She pulled it out and stared at it. Then she said, Ethel, I'm glad you saw this thing. Now I think I know where my hearing aid is.
Oh, no.
She had a suppository in her ear, and she thought it was her hearing aid, so she stuck her hearing aid as a suppository up her bum.
How'd she get to that place?
I have no idea. I hope I never get there. A guy is reading his paper when his wife walks up behind him and smacks him. It doesn't make any sense. There we go. Okay. A guy is reading his paper when his wife walks up behind him and smacks him on the back of the head with a frying pan. He asked, What was that for? She said, I found a piece of paper in your pocket with Betty Sue written on it. He says, Geez, honey, remember last week when I went to the track? Betty Sue was the name of the horse I went there to bet on. She shrugs and walks away. 3 days later, he's reading his paper when she walks up behind him again and smacks him on the back of the head with a frying pan. He asks, What was that for? She answers, Your horse called. A woman on the phone to her friend. I feel like my body has gotten totally out of shape, so I got my doctor's permission to join a fitness club and start exercising. I decided to take an aerobics class for seniors. I bent, twisted, gyrated, jumped up and down, and perspired for an hour. But by the time I got my leotard on, the class was over. A man buys a parrot and brings him home. But the parrot starts insulting him and gets really nasty. So the man picks up the parrot and tosses him into the freezer to teach him a lesson. He hears the bird squawking for a few minutes, but all of a sudden the parrot is quiet. The man opens the freezer door, and the parrot walks out, looks up at him and says, I apologize for offending you, and I humbly ask for your forgiveness. The man says, Oh, well, thank you. I forgive you too. The parrot then says, If you don't mind asking, what did the chicken do? He did frozen chicken.
You get it.
An elderly woman had just returned to her home from an evening at church service when she was startled by an intruder. As she caught the man in the act of robbing her home of its valuables, she yelled, Stop! Acts 2:38. Repent and be baptized in the name of the Lord, so that your sins may be forgiven. That's what Acts 2:38 says. The burglar stops in his tracks. The woman calmly called the police and explained what she had done. As the officers cuffed the man to take him in, he asked the burglar, Why did you stop? Why did you just stand there? All the old lady did was yell a scripture at you. Scripture, replied the burglar. She said she had an axe and 238s.
You like it. You like it a lot.
The church held a marriage seminar and the priest asked Luigi, as his 50th wedding anniversary approached, to share some insight on how he managed to stay married to the same woman all these years. Luigi replied to his audience, "Well, I try to treat her well and spend money on her, but the best thing I did was take her to Italy for her 20th anniversary." The priest said, "Luigi, you're an inspiration to all husbands here today. Please tell the audience what you plan to do for your wife's 50th anniversary." Luigi proudly replied, "I'm gonna go pick her up." So he dropped her off in Italy at her 20th anniversary. He's picking her up on his 50th.
Like a shopping trip.
Mm-hmm. A man is dining in a fancy restaurant, and there is a gorgeous redhead sitting at the next table. He has been checking her out since he sat down, but lacks the nerve to talk with her. Suddenly, she sneezes, and her glass eye comes flying out of its socket towards the man. He reflexively reaches out and grabs it out of the air and hands it back to her. "Oh my, I'm so sorry," the woman says. She pops her eye back into place. "Let me buy you dinner to make it up to you," she says. They enjoy a wonderful dinner together, and afterwards they go to the theater, followed by drinks. They talk, they laugh. She shares her deepest dreams, and he shares his. She listens. After paying for everything, she asks him if he would like to come to her place for a nightcap and stay for breakfast. They had a wonderful, wonderful time. The next morning, she cooks a gourmet meal with all the trimmings. The guy is absolutely amazed. Everything had been so incredible. "You know," he said, "you are the perfect woman. Are you this nice to every guy you meet?" "No," she replies, "you just happen to catch my eye." Lincoln, a young man, wanted to get his beautiful blonde wife, Lucy, something nice for their 5th wedding anniversary. So he decides to buy her a cell phone. She is all excited. She loves her phone and explains all the new features on the phone. The next day, Lucy goes shopping. Her phone rings and it's Lincoln. "Hi, honey," he says. "How do you like your new phone?" And she replies, "Oh, I just love it. It's so small and your voice is clear as a bell. But there's one thing I don't understand, though." "What's that, baby?" asked the husband. "How'd you know I was at Walmart?" "What? Doesn't make any sense. There's no reference to Walmart anywhere." Says Lincoln, a young man, wanted to get his beautiful blonde wife, Lucy, something nice for their 5th wedding anniversary. So he decides to buy her a cell phone. She is all excited. She loves her phone, and he explains all the features on the phone. The next day, Lucy goes shopping. Her phone rings, and it's Lincoln. "Hi, honey," he says. "How do you like your new phone?" And she replies, "I just love it. It's so small, and your voice is clear as a bell, but there's one thing I don't understand." "What's that, baby?" asked the husband. "How did you know I was at Walmart?" asked Lucy.
It's gonna ring whether he's in the toilet or.
Exactly. There's something missing there.
Yeah.
A middle-aged woman had a heart attack and was taken to the hospital. While on the operating table, she had a near-death experience. Seeing God, she asked, "Is my time up?" God said, "No, you have another 43 years, 2 months, and 8 days to live." Upon recovery, the woman decides to stay in the hospital and have a facelift, liposuction, and a tummy tuck. Since she had so much more time to live, she figured she might as well look even nicer. After her last operation, she was released from the hospital, and while crossing the street on her way home, she was hit and killed by an ambulance. Arriving in front of God, she demanded, "I thought you said I had another 40 plus years. Why didn't you pull me out of the path of the ambulance?" God replied, "My child, I'm sorry, but I didn't recognize you." All right, one more. An elderly gent was invited to his old friend's home for dinner one evening. He was impressed by the way his buddy proceeded every request to his how he proceeded every request to his. Okay, it's missing something. It's missing a couple words. An elderly gent was invited to his old friend's home for dinner one evening. He was impressed by the way his buddy proceeded every request to his wife with endearing terms of honey, my love, darling, sweetheart, pumpkin, etc. The couple had been married almost 70 years, and clearly they were still very much in love. While the wife was in the kitchen, the man leaned over and said to his host, I think it's wonderful after all these years you still call your wife those lovely pet names. The old man hung his head. I have to tell you the truth, he said. I forgot her name about 10 years ago. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me for Poetry and Jokes. Again, my name is Diallo. I will see you next time.
Olé.
Olé. Olé.